All right, let's dive right in. We're about to walk through a pretty stark vision of the near future. And this comes straight from a new threat assessment by the Danish Defense Intelligence Service. And just to be clear, this isn't some Hollywood script, it's a real intelligence briefing on the new, unsettling rules of global conflict. The report really pulls no punches. It opens with this warning right up front. What they're saying here is that the era of relative stability, the one we've all kind of gotten used to, yeah, that's officially over. The ground is literally shifting beneath our feet. So that's the big question, right? What does this new era of conflict actually look like? Because this isn't about tanks and soldiers in the way we used to think about it. We're going to break down what these new challenges are, who the key players are, and maybe most importantly, where these new battles are actually being fought. Okay, so first up, we have to get our heads around this massive shift in how the world's big powers are behaving. The old rulebook, it's not just being ignored, it's being ripped up and completely rewritten as we speak. This right here, this lays it all out. We've moved away from a time where everyone at least pretended to care about cooperation. Now it's all about raw national interest and this deep, pervasive mistrust. Even things like economic ties, which were supposed to bring us closer together, have been turned into weapons of coercion. And you've got three major players driving this whole shift. There's Russia, which now openly says it's in a direct conflict with the West. You have China, flexing its incredible economic and military muscle. And, the United States is adapting too, using its own economic and tech dominance way more aggressively. The common thread here, they're all willing to use raw power to get what they want. So when we say economic power as a weapon, what does that actually look like? Well, it looks like this. China controls 70% of the world's rare earth minerals. That's not just a strong market position. That's a strategic chokehold on basically everyone else. And why is that such a big deal? Because we're not talking about some obscure materials here. These are the absolute building blocks of our modern world. I mean, everything from the smartphone in your pocket to the most advanced military gear, like guided missiles and satellites, depends on them. So whoever controls that supply has immense leverage. And that brings us to the new battlefields. See, modern conflict isn't just happening on some physical front line anymore. It's happening more and more in the shadows, in what the intelligence community calls the gray zone. The name for this is hybrid warfare. And the key thing to understand is that it's all designed to mess with your opponent without ever actually declaring war. It's this toxic mix of sabotage, cyber attacks, disinformation, and economic pressure, all coordinated to work together. And believe me, this isn't just a theory. The report actually details Russia's real-world playbook. It's this decentralized model that's built for plausible deniability. Russian intelligence comes up with the plan, middlemen find people to do the dirty work online, and then local actors, who might not even know who they're really working for, carry out the attack. It's a disturbingly effective system. The battlefields for this new kind of war are, well, they're everywhere. There are critical infrastructure, power grids, the undersea cables that run the internet, and they're popping up in places that used to be pretty quiet, especially the Arctic. The Arctic is a perfect case study of this new competition. Each major power has a totally different agenda, and they're often in conflict. Russia wants military control and its northern sea route. The U.S. sees it as a vital first line of defense for missile warnings. And then you have China, calling itself a near-Arctic state, moving in to grab resources and shipping routes with some clear military ambitions down the line. This one line from the report just crystallizes the whole thing. The Arctic isn't some remote, empty wilderness anymore. If a major conflict ever breaks out, it's the strategic high ground of the entire planet. So let's zoom in a little on the two main architects of this new reality. What are Russia and China really trying to achieve, and what does their playbook for the future actually look like? The intelligence assessment lays out this chillingly specific timeline. The thinking is, the moment the war in Ukraine freezes, Russia will start a massive military rebuild. Within just a few years, it could be ready for a small, local war. And within a decade, a large-scale war. The goal is pretty clear. Get ready for a potential direct fight with NATO. And if you want proof of just how fast this is happening, just look at this number. A nearly 40,000% increase in the production of long-range drones in just 3 years. That is not just retooling a few factories. That's a full-blown war economy running at top speed. Now, let's turn to China. The central issue there, of course, is Taiwan. The report really digs into how Beijing might try to achieve its goal of reunification without launching a super risky all-out invasion. The strategy is something they call a ladder of escalation, basically a series of increasingly aggressive moves. It could start with a full military blockade, trying to just starve Taiwan's economy. It could escalate to missile strikes. Or, maybe as a more calculated move, China could seize smaller islands, like Kinmen, mainly just to see how the world, and especially the US, reacts. And what's fueling all of this ambition is China's huge state-run machine for getting foreign technology. It's this incredibly systematic process. The government identifies a tech it needs, it activates its global networks, it targets the best companies and universities, and then it funnels all that knowledge back home. It's a mix of legal and illegal methods, all for one goal, to power its military and economic growth. Okay, so let's bring all this global tension down to a very specific front line. The report uses the Baltic Sea as a case study, and it shows exactly how these abstract threats are playing out right now, right in Europe's backyard. The pattern of Russian aggression here is really clear. It's all about constantly testing the boundaries, violating airspace to see how fast NATO scrambles its jets, sailing aggressively to intimidate ships, jamming GPS signals to create chaos for civilian planes and boats. Every single action is a calculated probe designed to wear down NATO's stability and resolve. And this all builds to what is maybe the single most important warning in the entire report. According to this intelligence assessment, the Baltic Sea is now the most likely place for a direct military clash between Russia and NATO. So, if there's one thing to take away from this whole briefing, it's this. The old lines have all blurred. We are now living in an age of constant, simmering conflict. It's being fought on every front imaginable: economic, digital, psychological, all inside that murky gray zone that's not quite peace, but not quite all-out war either. And that forces us to ask a really fundamental question. In a world where the battlefield is everywhere, from the cables under the ocean to our social media feeds, and the weapons are invisible things like lines of code, where does the front line even begin anymore?